You're listening to the voices of the Occultinarium. Enter our circle and listen to what stirs.
Hello and welcome to tonight's episode of the Occultinarium. We are the voices of the Occultinarium, and your hosts are
Luigi,
Adriana,
Amelie, and Lynn. In tonight's episode, we will cover another tarot card, as we are all tarot people and we got together through tarot originally. We thought we wanted to analyze or talk about individual cards. And as we are a slightly chaotic group, or we like the chaos, we're not doing it like other people, starting with the aces or starting with the majors. We also have a system, sort of, but we're doing it with the decans. So in the last episode, we covered the Nine of Swords because we were in the decan of the Nine of Swords. And today's recording is the 15th of June, 2026. So we're in the decan of the third decan of Gemini, which is corresponding to the Ten of Swords for tarot. For those of you who are not familiar with the decans, we talk a little bit more about that in our previous episode, the Nine of Swords, so you can check it out. But we will probably cover a little bit general things just as it comes up anyway, I think. So yeah. Let's talk about the Ten of Swords. Last time we were like, nobody likes the Nine of Swords. It's well, not nobody, but a lot of people do not like it. Some of us here like it, but if it comes up in readings for maybe, I don't know, I wouldn't say less experienced tarot readers, but especially if you're less experienced, I guess it would be more scary. And for the Ten of Swords, it's similar. I mean, it can very often depict death straight out as well. So, or like a big end of something. Yeah. So if you're taking that card literally, you have if you're going into the Smith deck, we're having the man lying on the ground being stabbed by 10 swords. He is very, very dead if you're looking at it. And and then we have the Thoth, which we'll also cover, which is a little bit of a different symbolism here. But let's go into the Smith card first. So we can describe it maybe a little bit. I just said it's a man with 10 swords in the back. So we're assuming that he has been stabbed in the back and has died, and somebody made sure that he's really, really dead. Kind of like Caesar, Julius Caesar being stabbed and the Ides of March. But the thing is, so I don't remember all of the symbology. I'm pretty sure, Luigi, you can jump in. But what I do remember, the hand gesture, yeah, it's like the hand gesture of, what's it called, benediction. So that is one of the things that actually gives you a little bit of hope in that card, just from looking at it. Because while the man is dead, this little hand gesture that you're seeing is supposed to mean, I think, like all is well, or, it's going to be a new beginning kind of thing. So he made peace with the situation of being dead, basically. And we also see that there's the sunrise. Yeah, the sunrise in the back. So symbolically, it's not like as dark as it could be. The worst is over. The stabbing has been done. You have died. Now on to new things, basically. If you believe in an afterlife, or rebirth, that's where you're at now.
It's like a surrender. It's like a surrender to death.
Yes, surrender. That comes up in the card a lot, right? That surrendering to whatever fate has befallen you, and then just you do with it what you can. Yeah. Any others, remembering more about the symbolism? I mean, obviously we could go on the colors, and I don't remember. We have the blue mountains, and we have the red toga, or the red clothing.
The red cloth kind of looks like blood seeping out into the sea.
Oh, that's lovely.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned the colors. So something that came, it was actually in my dream last night when I was dreaming about the Ten of Swords. So the most not the most, but what comes up, what immediately grabs your attention, you can argue, or maybe it doesn't grab it immediately. You have to sit with it. Who knows? But like you mentioned, you have the darkened sky, but with the dawn on the horizon, and they are depicted with the colors black and yellow. What came forward was the image. So as we know, hopefully I'm not going too fast and we're not going to get lost. But as we know, this card is corresponding to the decan of Gemini, the last decan of Gemini. Gemini corresponds to the major arcana of the lovers, and the lovers is the path within the tree of life, which is kind of represented in the Ten of Swords or the Thoth deck, between Binah and Tifereth. So between the Sephira that is blackened in color and the Sephira that is yellow in color.
Yes,
So
I
giving
have
us
depiction here, so you could see that
yes,
we're having the path of the lovers here, and then we got black into Tiferet, yellow. Yes.
exactly. So that's the depiction of the skies in the background of the card, giving us a clue or a point of reflection for that particular path within the tree and the journey therein. So that's
Wow.
something that came up. The hand gesture, I was just going to say, because it kind of connects with what we were talking about. There is a lot of, understandably, there is a lot of Kabbalistical significance to the card. When is there never? But especially here, and especially with Tiferet, in fact, we haven't got to the Thoth yet, but in fact, we know that in the Thoth there is the presence of a physical heart, a pictorial heart. But I mentioned that because you mentioned before when we were looking for the symbolism, the hand gesture of the being stabbed. In my deck, is not as clear because I'm using the Radiant, so it doesn't look like it. In your deck, which was more of an original version, it shows it. That's a reflection of the hand gesture of the Hierophant. And there is a further connection there to Tiferet, because we know that the Hierophant, we can go into detail if we need to, but basically through the Hebrew letter associated to the Hierophant, which I kindly call the sage, it's also reflecting the energy of Tiferet. And why so much Tiferet? Because the decan, or the decan, however we want to pronounce it, of the Ten of Swords, we know it is ruled by the sun. So there is a strong energy here of that star that gave us all life.
That's
Exactly like Amelie is showing us.
Do you have any thoughts on, since we're into colors, and you mentioned that the black to the yellow going from Bina to Tiferet over the path of Gemini, but with the red clothes he's having, I mean, the left pillar and especially Gevra and also Hod are very depicted as red. So if you were to look at that, so all of that is very red in color. Do you have any insights, or do you know, is there any connection between that
something that
to the
we
actual
can
card that you think?
absolutely. So something that we can explore. We may not have the answers, but something that we can explore, and I invite everyone to investigate. So you mentioned out the red, which stands out, isn't it? And it's up against the yellow. That will indicate the pathway between Gabora and Tiferet this time around, which is the path of Libra, the path of justice, the scales. And if I now draw your attention to the top deck, we know that there are some scales on the tippity top of the sword.
Oh, yes. Right under the sun.
Exactly, right under the sun. And that's obviously another mystery, not necessarily a mystery that we can find answers, but it depends how much time we want to spend on them. Because if you look at a print of original Smith decks, which I don't know, Amelie, you might have one in your hand. If you look at the sun, my deck doesn't have it because I'm using a Radiant again. But if you look at the sun, there is the secret Lamed, the secret letter of the Justice
the
card.
extra,
Yes, right on the very top, next to between the X and the first ray, facing the right side.
A squiggly little hair.
A squiggly little hair. Wow.
So that's another conversation about the relationship between the energy of Libra, the energy of justice, and the sun energy and Tiferet energy, and the wisdom behind it. The purple, because in my deck we got the purple mountains and the blue ocean, obviously. That's clearly a reflection of now the path between Hesed and Hesed and Yesod, which we don't have a path, but we do have we don't have a path that goes from Hesed to Yesod, but we do have Hesed, Tiferet, and Yesod and Netzach. So all of those paths, and also the path from Tiferet to Yesod is also blue. So that could be a reference to the journey from Tiferet to Yesod, rather the blue and the purple.
Purple, yeah, it's purple in mine. The one that is blue for me is going from the Chochmah to Tiferet, which is the star, or, we can discuss that, but here's the star. And from Yesod to Malkuth, the universe is also the blue shade on this one. So here.
Yeah, so I think your colors in the paths, they are in the first scale, the Atzilufian scales, and obviously there are all of the other scales, because there's the 4 color scales we know in the tree, the one representing the kingdom of fire, the kingdom of water, the kingdom of air, the kingdom of earth. And sometimes, traditionally, the way that they are represented, because the paths have got this masculine energy association to them, we usually use the so the fiery color scales, while the Sephiroth
Wow.
will have the Queen's
You're
color
already
scales.
rabbit holing into color scales and stuff. I'm
Yeah,
like,
I know, I know.
It would
You
be
can
good to
spend
have an
ages with
episode
it.
on those because I have a feeling that a lot of people don't even know about that.
Yeah.
Something for us to bring into the agenda.
Yeah,
Color scales,
absolutely.
sure.
I think a
Let's
lot of people
go.
are not aware that there's actually 4 of them.
Let's do it. Okay. Yes, let's jump back into the 10.
No, I would like to say something
Yeah.
that
Go ahead.
what for me as well, what is very interesting is the transition from the Ninth of Swords to the 10th of Swords, because the period that was covered the Gemini, the first one, the Nine of Swords was up to the 10th of June. Now this week we start in the transition to the 10th of the Swords, and after that is the Two of Cups. So today is a beautiful accomplishment, and I think for that the 10th is in Malkuth, that is the final crystallization of the truth. This card, the 10th as well, but it is associated with the sun and the lovers, Gemini and the sun that is in this. And I think this combination changed everything because the sun brings like the end of despair that Mars was in Gemini the last week. So I think that what we have is to see is emotionally or psychologically how can that impact us. Because on the 9th of the Swords, we were suffering and the despair and the stress and the confusion and being in the middle, like in the eye of the storm that is in the middle of the night and then the sun comes. And for that, for me, the 10th here, the most revealing thing of the 10th is the dawn, that is the sun, the hope that there is light coming from the darkness is light. So to me, what it means, if I'm reading this card to somebody else, and it's like saying to that person there is a full revelation, the end of self-deception, it's like a truth that is the truth that comes after the crying, it's that moment that you don't have any more tears, that suddenly you realize I have like an eureka moment that triggers a change or triggers a subconscious reality that it can bring light, and it's the culmination of a mental process. And I think that is where this card to me is the positive side of the card, despite that the graphic is very dark, is the death of the belief or the narrative or the way of thinking that has caused us so much pain and suffering and end us in a very, very painful situation. So lovers obviously correspond to Gemini. According to the Golden Dawn, esoteric dawn, they corresponded Gemini with the lovers. But we have to remember that this card represents the choice, the union of the opposites, is duality, is integration, is I think a conscious decision making that we have to take care of here. So if for that, the 9th comes with the storm, the 10th is the calm, is the resignation, is like the mental clarity that they say to us, this is a new beginning. And I think that is a positive card when you see it. Obviously, you are doing a reading, someone is asking about romance or something like that. You can interpret it like it's the end of a relationship, or someone is betraying you because it's the source on your back, or that the relationship run its course, that there is nothing else there. There is nothing else apart of say goodbye, find someone new. For business as well, or career, or, work related, is that a project is not going to work. So it's announcing you that there is something that you have expected, that you had believed that will work, is not going to work. So it's the way that you read the cards, that you have to give that message to someone regarding that it can be, yes, probably something you don't expect, but something that's going to bring something new. Equally, the Ten of Swords is the shadow side of the Gemini. So it can be as well seen as fragmentation, overthinking, overanalysis, contradiction, being mentally exhausted, having, there's this narrative competing in your mind, this. So it's a period of you for find resignation and decision making. And as it is in Malkuth, in number 10, is the when the principles of that thinking and things that are not concluded, it get materialized. It's the crystallization of the final truth that is illuminated by the sun, is understood by the lovers, by the Gemini, to choose one path, and it completes the whole cycle, and the truth comes across, and the new reality starts, a new beginning. So that is for me the interpretation of the Ten of Swords.
It also, because we were talking about the Nine of Swords and Ten of Swords, you can really see how the swords are here as well. I find, because I think I mentioned last time how the swords are just intertwined in one another. It's almost like you can't find your way out. And here they just fallen over. And even though they've fallen over on you and stabbed you, it's better to be stabbed and know the truth so you can move on rather than just sitting and not being able to find a solution to what's happening. Yeah.
I think it's
It depends who
to
you
add
are,
to
I guess.
yeah,
But I
and
agree. I agree, but it depends on who you are.
add to
But
what
I think,
Adriana was
I don't know
sharing.
if that happened to you. Sometimes when you
Go on.
are crying so much or you are heartbroken and so on, there is 1 second, 1 minute that everything is like clear, like, okay, yes, it happened. It's an acceptance that the situation is over. And suddenly it's like a moment of recognition that, oh, wow, what's
An
next?
awakening.
It's like so clear. It's like an eureka moment that is like epiphany, that suddenly the suffering, the tears, there are no more. It's like, wow, you saw the situation. And for me, that moment, that precise situation is the Ten of Swords.
Yeah,
If
and I think
you're
you were addressing it, and Amelie was also addressing it as well. Like, because when you compare the sequence, I'll see if I can make them reflect itself in this order. We don't want to be too to the hair of specification, but indulge me. So we can see that the swords so far in the Nine of Swords were inflicting the individual within the ether region, and now eventually they went all the way down within the heart, but they didn't go any further. Versus in the Ten of Swords, now they went further down into the body. And Adriana, you were pointing at it because now we are in the number 10, which is an earthly number, the energy of Malkuth and materialization. Now the power of the mind, which is powerful and infinite, has to come to terms, if you will, with the materialization. So working within the limits and the edges and the forms made available to us. So that it's in a way is a depiction of the Ten of Swords, as well as the depiction of what we call the elemental dignity, so earth being the elemental dignity opposite air, because again, air is so free and it's so independent and it can be anything it wants to be, wherever they want to be, the spirits of air. But the spirits of earth are working with earth, and hence the entire image, hence the acceptance that I have now entered the realm. I have now entered, for lack of better words, the kingdom.
I was just thinking, like, when you're saying, because we were talking about where the swords are going and from the ether into the body, and then when you look at the Ten of Swords, it's like stabbing all the chakra points and then some. It's like really far. I was gonna say, because talking about the decans, and again, the decans are a system that is much older than tarot, of course. It's a very old astrological system, and the tarot builds on it, and especially the Smith deck are using some of the decanic images that we're having, and Smith incorporated some of those in her cards. Several things I wanted to mention, because if you're looking at the decanic wheel, the Ten of Swords is the last card. It's exactly the decan, let's say the Gemini sun decan, is the decan that is just before midsummer solstice or Litha, which we just covered an episode on. So a lot of these, the conversation that we had in our Litha/midsummer solstice, summer solstice episode is coming up again here in this decan of the third decan of Gemini. For example, I mean, if you're looking at the entire decanic images of Gemini, so the then 8, 9, and 10 of Swords corresponding, in the first decan of Gemini, it's all about finding duality and dividing things and dividing it into more and dividing it even more. And so Gemini is all about duality, right? We touched upon that a bit on the 9 as well. there's different types of dualities. And of course, duality is functioning, duality is not functioning, the splitting off, but also, but anyway, we touched a bit on the Nine of Swords. But in the Eight, we're having where things start to get divided, where we're looking for division, where we're looking to, like, you're dividing your fields, and make it smaller, make it even smaller, and even more, like, if you're going into, say, Gemini is a very, very mind, we're in the Swords, we're in the air, we're in the mind, a very mindful not mindful, but a mindful sign where it's all like you make your compartments, you figure out details, you go even more into details, you go more into the details of the details. That's like very Gemini. And that's in the first decan of Gemini, which is kind of the cardinal version of Gemini, basically. So it's all that energy of like dividing more. In the second decan, which was which then corresponds to the Nine of Swords, we are more in the more fixed version of Gemini, and where it's more about figuring out what the duality means, and being is often corresponding to a dual being, like a hermaphrodite, for example, is often depicted as hermaphrodite as images, something that is in between or is both at the same time, and tries to unite that and get the energy from that. And now we are past that. Now we're in the third. Now we're in the mutable version of Gemini. And so the mutables are those that, they change, they go away from the element that they are and turning into something else. Very often it's like an end. And for the last decan of Gemini in particular, now it's like we have divided enough and there's no more, we don't want to divide. Now we're at a point where duality and division doesn't serve us any longer. It has served its purpose, it doesn't serve us anymore. Now we have to decide. And so we come into this with the Ten of Swords very often. It's about making a decision, and it's often about making really hard decisions that are not easy to make. So this kind of idea of like, okay, something doesn't serve us longer, we have that represented in the Gemini myths very often about in the divine, or there's a lot of like mythological twins, and often Castor and Pollux, for example, right? One twin is divine, the other is human or is mortal, so immortal and mortal. We're having in the Christian myth, we're having Cain and Abel. In all these, or in these twin myths, usually or always, at the end, one of them has to die for the other to survive. And that's the point of the Ten of Swords. So you're having many divisions, you're having many choices. There's, it's mostly about two, but one of those two has to go away. One has to die so that the other can go forth and can go live. And that is not always an easy, usually never an easy decision to make. It's really it could be between, okay, do I go and leave my family and go live in another country forever? Or, or do I go down with this ship? And, it's hard decisions to make. And touching on Letha in that sense, with the twins, where one has to live and one can live, one has to die, we're in this idea that, which you talked about with the Holly King and the Oak King, is one tradition. But very often here in midsummer, there's a tradition of celebrating the sun, right? This is the year the sun is at the highest point, but we also know after midsummer, the sun's energy and power is going to dwindle. So the death of the sun, or the death of the Sun King, is in many traditions, yes, the what is being brought forth in this decan. Like you said, the Oak and the Holly King, right? So the Oak King was reigned spring and summer, now has to die or leave, but we can say a symbolical death at the very least, so that the Holly King can reign again. And that is all the symbolism, or that is all the energy that we're having in this decan of the last decan of Gemini, which is lasting. Let me just check, because I don't know. But it's from the 11th to the 20th, of course. Yeah, from the 11th to the 20th of June, and then we're having midsummer, and then we go into the next phase, the next energy. And
that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's finance. It makes sense. It's usually a hard call, hard decisions, not normally easy ones to make. I was talking about the decans, and then I should mention that there's different rulers, right? So we've talked mostly about the sun in Gemini, which is the rulership for the descending order, but there's another one, and we don't have to go into details. But in the triplicity order, the ruler for this decan would be Saturn. So we either have the Sun in Gemini or Saturn in Gemini for the energy. Both, we are both, right? But these are the two energies that we're having in this decan. Go ahead,
The
Lucy.
decans, they really cover. No, thank you. I think the decans really they shed so much light on a lot of the symbolism behind the intended, shall we say, meanings of the cards. Because as you went through the 8, the 9, and the 10 of swords, you can see how the sign itself interacts with the individual planetary rulerships of the individual decans. So I guess when it came to the powers being in the 8 of swords, with that expansion, we see how the expansion of Jupiter can, what's the word that I'm looking for, can bring the mind into overdrive or the communication into overdrive, because Gemini is a sign of communication as well. And when in the realm of the 9, which is more ethereal and magical and mystical, shall we say, the influence of Mars creates all these possible illusions or visions of dread and fear and whatnot. And then we come into the earthly realm of the 10, but now with the sign of communication influenced by the energy of the sun. And I guess what that brings is the power of words. You know, there is this whole school of thought or school of mystery of the power of words, the abracadabra, words that create manifestation. The root of magic being in the alphabet, in the voice, in the word, in the breath, and whatnot. And maybe that's another representation of the Ten of Swords, the power of that communication in the realm, in the kingdom, on earth, shall we say, as well as everything else that we've been sharing. Honestly, it's like a roller coaster. Like you can take it in so many directions.
It is. Let's dive a bit more into the Thoth version as well. So I'm sure Luigi also has a lot to say about it. I mean, you already started talking about. Well, you pointed out that the what was. I mean, first of all, I guess we can say that this card also is called the Lord or Lady. It's called Ruin. So it's not. It's you draw the card and you see. Ruin, this doesn't look good. So ruin, downfall, end very much, but it's called Lord of Ruin. As you pointed out, Luigi, the 10 swords that we have here, they are arranged in the order of the Kabbalistic tree of life, where the handles of the swords are the Sephiroth, or in the places of the Sephiroth. And all of the points, they're all pointing towards, well, the middle, which would be Tifereth, basically. And the middle is shattered. Yeah.
I just want to hold it upside down, really.
Actually, it looks quite beautiful. Also, we have the heart in the middle as well. We have an actual heart symbolism in the middle. So this shattered, I feel like this shattered idea of or Tifereth being shattered when I'm just running off of my mind right now of not actually like, this is not research, this is just my brain right now, but just thinking if we're having Tifereth as the most, how do you say, the best version that humanity can ever be while still being human, if that makes sense. Like the sixes, it's like the most, it's our peak. Like beyond that, we're going into not being manifested anymore and going to something else, right? But that being like basically the best human version of everything. And in this card or in this decan, that bestness, that ideal getting completely shattered by everything else is very much like this idea, or I feel like it's very this like, okay, no further. Like there's an end. This has crashed, or this will crash, no further here. Something else, something new must come. But this thing right here, no.
Absolutely.
Is it too dark? So everybody is like...
No, I'm listening because it's taking me on a journey, honestly. And that's absolutely truthful, because again, like we said, I think the ruin, like, let's reflect. What do you guys feel when you hear the word ruin itself, or when you reflect on it in the context of the Ten of Swords? What comes to you, through you?
But for me,
no answer is a bad answer.
No, I think that the relationship with Tifereth to me is the emotional aspect of the human being, because it's not the mental aspect, it's not the overkilling or so. It's like you have to suffer so much. Your heart is the emotional side, the heart, the heart chakra that you have to penetrate it in order to release what you have created about yourself in order to create a new thing. And we know perfectly that if we want to trigger in ourselves a change, it cannot be mentally. It's not through affirmations, thousand affirmations. You have to feel. Unfortunately, we learn through pain, so we have to feel that pain. We have to exaggerate it to the maximum to culminate to the apex is like a climax of suffering, that breakthrough, shatter in order to bring the inner truth of your soul, the one that never suffered, the one that is constant, the eternal side of yourself to flourish. But that is to me the image of the Tifereth, So for that, I think that all the source is going towards even the mental aspect of yourself, of the understanding Binah and Geset and so on. It's still very mental, It has to trigger toward that visceral aspect, and the ones that are coming down as well. It's like ascending from the more corporeal subconscious pain or suffering that we are not even aware of. It has to penetrate that center of truth in order for you to release and bring something new. So for
We
me,
talked
that's
about
the
it with the 9. Yeah, in the 9 we also saw it. The
in the
9 is kind
10th
of
as
where you
well.
really have to, in the 9 where you have to start really feeling it, and only if you feel it, you can go on, and then you can reach the
Yes.
end, which we have in the 10.
But the 10th
And
is
Amélie, you mentioned, and Amélie, you mentioned that in the 9 that for you it looks more like, or you feel it's more like a glass. Like you had this various image like with glass, and I'm feeling like with the 10 of swords with the sun, and especially like in the Thoth, right, where you really like we have the sun and Gemini, and then this imagery that we're basically attacking Tifereth, which also is the sun. I just have this image that also with Gemini, I suppose, that the sun is just reflected so much on this, so bright that if you're like we're having a mirror in the middle. And but Gemini is very mirroring, right? Both with the dualities, but also, you have mirror images, and they're just reflecting back and forth. And they also can be very good at wearing masks. Yeah. But you're having this reflecting. Now you have so much, there's so much power coming. Not power is the wrong word, but there's such a force coming in with this exacerbated sun energy that completely shatters those mirror images that Gemini holds up, or those images of glass, and shatters it. And that is where the Gemini energy, I think, really has to look at its truthful self without the mirrors, without the masks, which is for a Gemini probably very painful. To actually not reflect, not self-reflect, but actually self-reflect.
But to become one, to become one unit, one truth. From duality, but it's always like from one to go, like a division, like a mitosis
one
division,
twin has to die.
Two. But the fusion, like a nuclear fusion, from two separated beings to become one, I think the effort is bigger that, from one to divide into two. So
it's the great work. It's the great illusion. Like I think a lot of take everything that I say now with a grain of salt, because it's just purely based in tradition, but it's not necessarily. It doesn't have to be the truth of everyone that is here now or is listening. But the whole idea is that the possible root of our suffering is this continuous struggle of us handling the illusion of separation. So part of the great work is to reflect the as above, so below. But because we are creatures that we are, like, we are imperfect beings, if you will, or whatnot. Agree to disagree, but basically, like one of the depiction in the Ten of Swords, and specifically in the images that we've seen in the top version, is this idea that the ruin of the ego, because there is an ego, obviously, the ego energy is in the heart center, is in Tiferet, based on tradition, and now it's shattered because it's entering the kingdom, it's entering Malkuth, like we said before. And I'm hinting at this because if you observe at the center, on top of that, it's a bit evident in this card because it's much bigger, the format, but you have the illumination of a star, because obviously the sun is a star, but clearly that's also a reference to the star card itself, being one Aquarian, airy, fixed air, and we are still in the realm of air with Gemini, and there is a hint in there possibly of Libra because of the scales above. Now we found the secret maybe not so secret, hinted presence of Aquarius, which is about humanity, isn't it? It's the collective sign, it's the sign of invention. It's the humanitarian sign. Again, I don't want to go too far into the cosmos that I'm going to lose all the people that are listening to us. But again, with that Saturnian rulership and Saturn being very Malkuth in itself, but just in a different format or in a different embodiment, if you will. So you have all these wisdoms and lessons and truth of the reflection of the great work, which is as above, so below. And I bring the as above, so below because, Amelie, this is thanks to you. When you were holding it upside down, I was like, oh, what's that? So if you just ignore this and you observe the free sword stabbing the heart, what's that a reflection of as above, so below? I need to turn it around. Basically, we have here
it's the three
a reflection of the Three of Swords, which came, now I need to turn it around again, which came up here. So there's a code in there, there's something to be deciphered in there. We won't be able to explain it very well, not because we are not good at it, but just because it requires a hell of a lot of boards with chalk and red strings and analysis more than our capacity is available for at the moment.
It would be really fun to get back to once we have all the decans and then look at the decans with the Three of Swords, for example, when you go to that and then see how it connects to the 10.
Mm-hmm. We need to make a mental note of it or a physical note of it.
I can make a physical note. Amelie, you're
And
gonna
you
say something.
I was just about to say, because I was, I remember like random facts, vaguely remember random facts. And Frieda Harris that made these, she struggled a lot with this suit of swords. She really struggled, and she struggled specifically with the 10 of swords. And just like in the Smith deck, this is also, this whole thing is not about stabbing, but it's about the poison. So this is the poison dripping, and then the poison has actually entered the 10 of swords. And I just vaguely remember that she was actually writing letters to Crowley, and she was like, do not tell me to change this because I cannot take it anymore. Because she really had like a really hard time with this. I just remember it was quite dramatic. It was like, like this very poetic way of writing of hers, but it was just very dramatic. Like, oh, I just cannot take it anymore. That kind of like, so she was really going through it when she was do I want to say painting these
Painting it. Yeah.
The drawing
Yeah.
the cards, yeah.
When she was drawing it, she really struggled with this. I don't know. I wanted to say something about Thoth as well.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
No. I want to hear what Amelie has to say.
Luigi, take it away. I wanted to mention it because it has to be mentioned, but take it away because you have an academic flair.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the only thing that I wanted to mention about when you mentioned that, it's just this idea. Again, these are just us playing with the material, and it's almost like what's the material that children play with that you can? It's a gummy, and you can make shapes with it.
Play-Doh.
Play-Doh, yeah.
Play-Doh.
Thank you. Like a Play-Doh. So it's just. This is none of the things that are necessarily going to come out of my mouth are going to be text work, but rather like a Play-Doh of work. So just full disclosure. But because you brought out Thoth, and that is the alleged. I need to be very careful with my words because I might get punished by whoever is going to be listening to us. But the 11th Sephira, or at least the invisible 11th. Sephira. And I mentioned that because of the number 11 being another correspondence of what? Aquarius, the 11th sign, which we saw how there is an underlying play of Aquarian, not energy necessarily, but maybe energy, but mostly mission, destiny, statement, purpose within the 10 of Swords specifically, but arguably the suit of air, the element of air,
Like
the kingdom of air.
Air element, yeah.
Yeah,
Overthinking
exactly.
is the thinking again, is the mind.
Well, and overthinking, which is naturally
not
gonna.
Overthinking.
No, exactly, but overthinking, which comes from the mind, as a result of the knowledge, not overthinking as in a negative thing to do, but the amount of meditation, the amount of reflection, the amount of assessment, the amount of adding and subtracting, multiplying and divisioning, if that's even the right verb, that will do. Because we can spend a whole episode on that, but the reality is that the knowledge of it all, we're going to spend the rest of our life pursuing it, exploring it, absorbing it, putting it into practice, putting it into action. And yet, there is probably not enough time for us to obtain attainment of that. And maybe that's a part of ruin, like that. What do you mean that all of my efforts, all of my days, all of my sacrifices are amounting to
Something you can
nothing?
never reach.
Yeah.
I still cannot
So-
get through because it's broken.
Yeah, and also possibly the Aquarian presence in giving us a possible explanation of the purple of the mountains. And because purple being one of the colors of Aquarius, or violet or purple. You know that I'm colorblind, so I may say purple and I mean violet or vice versa. But that color being Aquarian in itself.
Any of you ever had a significant pull of the Ten of Swords? Like, do you remember one? I'm pretty sure you've all had one, but do you remember a specific time you pulled it for yourself or somebody else and it was like something great? I'm putting you in the spot. I was
No.
just wondering because, I'm...
It happened to me in a reading I did this week. No, today's Monday, last week. Yes, yes. And it was very funny because it was someone who lived in Paris who wanted to move to Africa. And the first card, it was in the bottom of the deck. It was the Ten of Swords. And on the first, it was like temperance. The first card became Sacro. So to me, it was like say goodbye to Paris and start doing your bags and trying to make everything possible in order to move to the destination you were thinking about it. Because she had judgment and temperance, and in the bottom of the deck, it was the Ten of Swords. So to me, it was very evident that her time in Paris, it was over. I think, and then it was very funny because she was contemplating. She didn't even tell me exactly what was her intentions, or the consultation was to confirm her. But she was thinking it was the right path. But it came into the cards like I said, well, I feel like there is a project you have, something is finishing. I think Paris is finished for you and something new is coming across that you have to adapt. It's like having a foot on earth and a fruit in the water, like temperance and so on. And I say the judgment that she has, it was like a higher call for her to move on and to rise from the dead, have a life somewhere else, So yes, I think that when I saw her reaction, it was like that. Wow, that moment I was talking about, that the clarity, the flash after the anguish and the stress and the conflicted narratives that she had, became very clear to her. So I think it was more the reaction I saw on her face, more than what I was saying to her. But it was like that flashlight that it came to her, like it's very clear to me now. Yeah. So yes, I think it is happening, particularly last week and so on, that in this period that I was saying to myself, but we are in the Knight of Swords. Next week is Ten of Swords, and voila, it's there, at the bottom of the deck. Yeah.
What about you guys? Do you remember anything that sticks out?
The only thing that it's probably more personal than it happened with clients. Because obviously one challenging thing about clients is when they don't give you the back, not immediately, I mean ahead of time, because you might deliver a message like this will happen, this may happen, this can happen and whatnot. But then if you don't hear back from the client, you never know if it's going to happen or not. But with myself, I remember having a complete change of heart on the Ten of Swords, almost indicating that there is a way to, because this might be dark and it might get very personal. So all the gratitude to the people listening that are holding space for this statement. But mental health, which is also a field that I work in my professional life, almost as looking like a knot that you cannot untangle, because it's so complex, it's so multi-layered, and I won't be able to express properly or inherently how the Ten of Swords has enlightened me, or at least opened my eyes in ways that there is a way through mental health, not out necessarily, but through, mental health. But that's what it's done to me in more than one occasion, I would say. This idea of liberation. And that's why, hence why I usually refer to the Lady of Ruin as the Lady of Liberation.
It makes sense. Yeah, it does make sense, I think. I don't really remember any specific things about the Ten of Swords.
Well, I just wanted to point out, because I know that soon we're going to have to wrap up, but I just wanted to point out, I don't know if you guys ever noticed at the very bottom between the Gemini sign, there's like a pentacle. There's a pentacle at the handle of the sword. So obviously there can be several reasons as to why, but a possible one. So we know that decanically we are transitioning into the realm of Cancer and the realm of the Cups. Equally, if we're going by the order of the deck and the order of the kingdoms of the element, fire, water, air, and earth, the 10th will be followed by a new ace, and that will be the Ace of Pentacles, giving us further indication of the earthly influence over the Ten of Swords, or the relationship and the dynamic between earth and air again. Earth as an opportunity, isn't it? In the mind with all of its unlimited potential, celebrating and acting upon that opportunity.
Yeah, because we've got the Princess of Pentacles there as well, or
Exactly.
Page of Pentacles as well.
Exactly. And the Ace of Discs as well, in a way, which we've talked about, I think, once upon a time when we were all in session with each other, how these can also be perceived as possibly wings, referring to the air element of the kingdom before, or of the kingdom presiding over.
Yes, I remember
Great.
that.
Any last words to the last of the swords?
One last word,
One
if it's
last
not too
word.
much. Because I know that we covered back to the Smith card, we did cover, or at least attempted to, and I think done fairly well, the black and the yellow, the red and the yellow, but there was a bit of, what about the purple and the blue? Possibly we uncovered it unintentionally towards the end of the episode. Because when we mentioned the as above, so below, what came to mind is that blue is a color for Sagittarius, and Sagittarius would be in the tree. Let me get the card. Would be in the tree connecting Tifereth to Yesod, as we mentioned probably before. So that would be the blue relevance, traveling from the yellow of Tifereth, going into the purple, or violet rather, of Yesod. And I mentioned as above, so below, because obviously if Gemini is the above, Sagittarius is the below, is the opposite
Yeah, they're
side,
on
is the
opposite
reflection.
sides. Yeah, yeah.
So we covered all of the relatives of Gemini. We covered Gemini themselves. We covered their mighty Aquarius. We covered the Libra, the cardinal Libra, and we covered the reflection of Sagittarius.
The purple could also be an Aquarius thing, because you've got, amethyst, purple, Aquarius, just saying.
Yeah, and purple is the primary color, well, the Aziluthian color of Aquarius as well.
And we're having, if you're looking at the colors, I think, because I asked about red before, and it had occurred to me that Gemini is in the red shades when we give colors to all the stars, all the zodiac. Then Gemini is one of those rusty red, or I don't remember which one, but it's one of the red shades. So that would also make sense why he's wearing red, because Gemini is reddish.
Yeah, and we got the influence of the sun.
Is that the flag he's wearing?
Maybe.
Yeah,
the flag of the sun. Yes.
Yeah.
The flag of the sun.
We got the influence of the sun and the red of life, the red of blood, the red of fire. There's all of that we can play with.
If you're looking at that, and with the whole symbolism that we brought up with the sun and shattering the glass and the mirror, that maybe in the sun card, that child is that man as a child, or he's still like frolicking in Tifereth and in the sun energy, and just being like, woo.
Yes.
And then he grows up and stuff happens, and well, at the end he's stabbed after his reign as Julius Caesar is over. Yeah, he gets stabbed, and all he's got left, and then people just wrap him in that cloth and reminds him of his wonderful, splendid sun youth. I'm just running off the top of my head, but yeah.
No, but it's very possible.
All right. Awesome. Hey, well, thank you guys for another tarot episode. These are fun. Thanks also, guys, for joining in and listening. And maybe you got inspired and you found some things that you didn't yet know about the Ten of Swords. Feel free to drop us a comment below about new findings, old findings, your own experiences. like and share, subscribe, and if you like, you can buy us a coffee or tea, because we're more British than anything, I guess.
True.
Boy, boy. All right, well, see you guys in the next
See you.
episode. Thanks for joining in. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. May the Ten of Swords be kind to you.
Or as harsh as it has to be.
Whatever is needed.
Whatever is needed.
Enjoy the Ten of Swords. Enjoy it.
We are the voices of the Occultinarium. Welcome to the rabbit holes.